Can you explain what happened?
Right after the fight, I feel like I was dying, and I didn't know if my life would stop at that moment of time. That was how serious it was.
Charlotte Daly with Male Sport Boxing. I'm joined by Zhilei Zhang. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad to be here in camp with you. It will be your 31st professional fight. How's your mindset going into this one? Does it differ from any of your previous fights?
It's pretty much the same mindset, because for me, Kabayel is a very tough opponent. We're training very hard to prepare for Kabayel, and I believe we did everything we can, and I'm very excited.
Well, before we talk about Agit Kabayel specifically, I want to talk a little bit more about you and let the people know a little bit more about you. Now, turning professional was quite a big decision for you because you had to leave the financial safety and the security of the Chinese government. What was that like for you, making that decision to go professional and walk away from that?
Well, when I started boxing, those names has been on the back of my mind. Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Evander Holyfield. And I've been training with those motivation in my mind. In 2008, I captured silver in Beijing Olympics. 2012, again, I was in the Olympics in London. And at that moment of time, I feel like my amateur career is probably coming to an end. But it would be a shame if I don't turn pro and see what the professional boxing looks like. If I hang it up, it would be such a shame. So I turned pro without hesitation.
You said there about the Olympic silver medal. Now, if you had have stayed in China and you rode out your career there and maintained that Olympic silver medalist status over there, do you think life would have been easier for you in that route?
It could have been. It could be a 9-to-5 desk job. It could have been. I could have become a coach, training the up-and-coming boxers. But fairly speaking, life could have been easier.
Life could have been easier, but it's not the route that you chose. You decided to up sticks and move to America. Now, I heard members of your team say before, when you first came over, you guys only had a couple of £100 to see you over. What was life like when you first came over here?
Well, when I first came here, fresh off the boat, everything is fresh, everything is new. I feel curious about everything I saw, especially when I knocked out my first opponent. Debut 17 seconds, I thought that was professional boxing. That was so easy. And for the couple fights after that, it's really relatively easy for me. But now, more and more challenges, more and more difficulties, but I feel like I chose the right path.
Talking about those early fights in America, now, I heard that you started off that you were boxing in basketball courts with makeshift changing rooms, dressing rooms. What was that like, and what was that experience?
When I first got to those type of fights, because I believe there's a point of a career that everybody has to go through those type of fights. That was a very local show, where the locker room was the bathroom and somebody came in pooping and everybody had to leave. So those were experiences that I believe everybody will go through at the earliest of their career, but I know that what I want is beyond this. I wanted more challenge and I wanted to achieve next level.
You said that you knew what you wanted was beyond that and you wanted the next challenge, but were there any moments of doubt or regret that you thought, why am I doing this?
Well, not really, because that's not in my dictionary. When you're talking about training hard, when you talk about sparring gets hard, when you're talking about losing a fight, those are not the reasons that I even thought about giving up. The only time I thought about giving up was when I was in China waiting for my American visa. I was put on hold for about half a year. And I thought, because of logistic issues like this, it made my career really difficult. And that's the only time I was thinking about possibly giving up because of visa issues. But when it comes to the boxing itself, I never thought about it.
Interesting you say about the visa issues. I was going to ask you about this. So you obviously come over to America, you're training out here, but it must make it quite difficult then for you to go back home and see family and go back to China because of then getting back into the US. How is that?
Oh, the biggest issue is whenever I leave this country, I have to go to American embassy to apply for a renew of my visa in order to come back. And that will put me on hold for days to weeks. For example, if there's a press conference in London that requires me to leave the United States, I will go to London, but I have to apply for a visa to come back again. So there are occasions that it's not that I don't want to go to those media events, it's just I can't go because those will put a lot of waiting time in my training camp, and I can't afford that.
I've heard other examples as well, not just about press conferences, but you returned back to China for your father's funeral, and I think you were stuck in China for so long you had to give up your accommodation here in America because you just didn't know whether you were going to get back in.
When my mother passed away a couple of years ago, I went back to China with a very heavy heart, and I found out after the funeral that my visa was put on hold. So with everything that's happening, that was, I would say, the lowest of my lifetime. And I was ready to tell Kurt to sell my car and to get rid of my rental house. And because I cannot be with my family and I cannot come to the US, then I'm stuck in the middle. So I was really disappointed and frustrated. That was the moment that I really want to give up.
What was it that made you not give up in that moment?
Oh, the visa came through magically, and I was ready to put a tag on my car in the dealer, ready to be sold, and the visa came through, and I told Kurt, just get my car back, I'm coming back.
Don't sell it. But so fights and victories, let's say, against Agit Kabayel must mean even more to you because of what you have to sacrifice to be here, to train, and to be away from your family.
The joy of victory that you get is way more than the challenge that life poses on you. And as long as I got the win, everything's worth it.
And what do you make of Agit Kabayel? What do you think of him as a fighter, and how do you think he ranks compared to other opponents you've faced in the past?
Agit Kabayel, he's young, he's on the search, and he's fighting for his family as well. And I think he wants it as much as I do. I believe he has a plan, and he probably look at me like an old man, and he can get out in a few rounds, or in the later rounds, but we'll see, who knows? We'll talk in the ring.
Talking of being slightly older, and one of the things that I'm sure frustrates you the most is when people talk about your stamina and your fitness. Now, we saw you in the gym yesterday, and we saw you on that treadmill, and your ability to raise your heart rate and lower it so quickly. It was really impressive for us to watch. How much does the criticism of your stamina annoy you when you're putting in those yards and you can see those metrics in training?
Well, I don't really bother. I'm not really bothered by criticism. I think it's just what people think about certain things. It has nothing to do with me. What I have to do is to train well and to live a disciplined life, and that's all I want.
Focus on the things that you can control, I guess. Now, another big part of your training regime, which we were talking to Kurt about, is nutrition. That's kind of developed over the last two fights. How important has nutrition been to you, and what sort of changes have you been making with that?
Well, that Jerry Forrest fight is a turning point in my career, and before that fight, I eat what I want, I drink what I want. There's no nutrition. And after that fight, I really start to pay attention to my physical health, and we hire nutritionists, and we have been followed diet plan. In recent years, I'm feeling really great, and I believe nutrition is really important part of my career, and I'm feeling greater than ever.
That Jerry Forrest fight was quite a scary moment. For those that potentially don't know what happened, can you explain what happened?
Well, we were put in the bubble during COVID. That fight happened during COVID, so we were put in the bubble. There were 3 to 4 days where I was put in the hotel room without access to the outside world. So I didn't train for the 3-4 days before the fight, and I didn't drink any water. So on the fight night, the first 3-4 rounds just went as planned. I was boxed beautifully, but in the 5th round, I feel like my body was cut off, and something was not right. In the last couple of rounds, I didn't know what happened. I lost my memory. I didn't know how I made it, but I don't remember anything. When I went back to the locker room, I just feel like my body wasn't right. My heart wasn't right, and nothing was right at this point of time. So I told my team to get me to the hospital, get the ambulance. And in the hospital, I was diagnosed with acute kidney failure and liver function escalate. That was a very dangerous moment. But I believe that fight is a warning for me to pay attention to my nutrition and my preparation. I think that fight saved my career.
Was your initial thought, I've got to stop boxing? What was the first thing that came to your mind when you heard that?
Well, it was actually in the locker room after the fight, right after the fight. I feel like I was dying, and I didn't know if my life would stop at that moment of time. That was how serious it was. And then at the hospital, when they told me my diagnosis, I really thought it was the end of my career. And later on, the doctors told me it was acute, which means it's reversible, and it took days to recover. And they kept me in there for 4 days. After that, they released me.
Well, a victory over Kabayel will be another name on the list for you. What do you think a victory over him will do for you, and what do you want within the next 12 months?
Well, when you ask me a long-term plan, I don't really have one because I need to get past Kabayel. And without that victory, nothing is possible. And this is what I know. This is what my team knows. So we know this is a tough fight coming up. We have to be ready and focus on Kabayel 100%.